In 1975, the scientific world stumbled upon a discovery that terrified the industrial food system. A single plant, identified by the National Academy of Sciences, that possessed the power to end protein deficiency in the tropics forever. They called it the supermarket on a stalk. It is a biological anomaly that creates its own fertilizer from thin air. It has roots that contain 20 times the protein of a potato, and it is completely independent of the global supply chain. But then, almost as quickly as it appeared in the headlines, it vanished. It disappeared from agricultural programs. It was quietly erased from seed catalogs. Why? The answer is not because the plant failed. The answer is because the modern agricultural industry is worth $200 billion a year. And this plant threatens every single penny of it. It does not need their chemical nitrogen. It does not need their patented seeds. It is a biological machine that allows a family to unplug from the system entirely, and threats to the bottom line do not get funding. They get buried. Welcome to Roots of Legend. Today, we are not just gardening. We are reopening a cold case. We are unearthing the winged bean, the plant that was too good to be allowed to succeed. By the end of this broadcast, you will understand why this green engine was silenced, and more importantly, how you can use it to declare your own independence. So, what exactly are we undertaking here today? We are reclaiming a lost inheritance. By the time the screen fades to black, you will hold in your hands the manual to a biological supermarket that the modern world has conveniently forgotten. First, I am going to take you deep into the mist-covered highlands of Papua New Guinea. We need to go there to understand why ancient tribes valued this plant not for the beans hanging in the air, but for the secret meat buried underground. It was a survival strategy that kept them alive when the hunt failed and the famine came. Then, we will strip away the myths and look at the hard science. You will see the evidence of its self-fertilizing engine, a mechanism so efficient that NASA once considered taking this plant off-planet to feed astronauts on long-haul missions to Mars. I will teach you the unmistakable field signs, the sacred geometry of the X, so you can identify this plant in the wild without the fatal risk of confusing it with its poisonous lookalikes. And crucially, I will give you the safety manual. Because nature never gives a gift without a lock, this plant contains a chemical defense system in its seeds. If you do not know how to neutralize it with heat, it turns this superfood into a digestive nightmare. I will show you exactly how to break that lock. Finally, you will learn the lazy gardener's method. How to plant this once, walk away, and let it feed your family for years to come. I promised you a legend. And in the next few minutes, I am going to prove it exists. To truly understand the winged bean, we have to travel back in time, not to the fertile crescents of Europe, but to the rugged, isolated mountains of Melanesia. For thousands of years, the tribes in these highlands practiced a form of agriculture that would baffle a modern farmer. They cultivated the winged bean, yes, but they did not care about the green pods we see in Asian markets today. To them, those were just the appetizers. The main course was buried beneath the soil. They treated this vine like a sweet potato. They waited for the dry season, the hungry months when the game was scarce and the rivers ran low. When other crops withered, they would dig. And what they pulled from the earth was not just a starch tuber. It was a dense, protein-rich root that sustained their muscle mass and energy levels without a single ounce of meat. It was their insurance policy against starvation. For centuries, this knowledge remained locked in those mountains. The rest of the world looked at the winged bean and only saw a garnish. Then, the timeline jumps. The setting shifts from the ancient jungles of Melanesia to the sterile, fluorescent-lit offices of Washington, D.C. The year was 1975. The National Academy of Sciences released a thick, dusty report titled The Winged Bean, a high-protein crop for the tropics. It was supposed to be a bombshell. The researchers were stunned by the data. They declared it the only plant capable of rivaling the soybean in nutritional density, yet far superior in its ability to survive harsh conditions. It was poised to be the next global commodity, the soybean of the future. So, what happened? Why did the revolution fail? The answer lies in the architecture of the plant itself. The winged bean is a wild spirit. It is a climbing vine. It twists, it turns, it creates a chaotic, beautiful tangle of green biomass. And the massive combine harvesters that drive our industrial food system, they hate tangles. They need uniform, low-growing rows. The industry realized they could not mechanize it easily. They could not patent the way it grows wild. And so, the machine rejected it. The savior was shelved, relegated to backyard gardens and obscure ethnobotany textbooks. But while the industry moved on, the plant remained, waiting for those willing to get their hands dirty. Now, let us strip away the romance and look at the cold, hard science behind this legend. Why is this plant a biological anomaly? Most tuber crops you know, like potatoes, cassava, or yams, are essentially biological batteries holding starch. They are pure carbohydrates. Energy, yes, but empty of building blocks. The winged bean disrupts this rule. According to nutritional data that has stood the test of time since that 1975 report, the tuber of this plant contains up to 20% protein. To put that in perspective for you, a standard potato hovers around 2%. A sweet potato even less. Mathematically speaking, in terms of muscle-building potential, one winged bean tuber is worth 10 potatoes. It is, quite literally, vegetable meat. But how does it achieve this? Plants do not just conjure protein out of thin air. Or do they? If you were to pull a healthy winged bean plant out of the ground, you would see something strange on its roots. Massive, rough nodules, sometimes as big as golf balls. To the untrained eye, they look like a disease, a tumor. Your instinct will be to cut them off. Do not do that. If you cut them, you kill the engine. Because under a microscope, these are not tumors. They are biological factories. These nodules house a symbiotic bacteria called rhizobium. These bacteria have the unique ability to crack the nitrogen bond in the atmosphere, something corn and wheat cannot do, and pull fertilizer directly from the air into the soil. This plant does not just grow in poor soil. It heals the soil. It pumps nitrogen back into the earth. It is a self-sustaining loop. However, nature always demands a balance. There is no such thing as a free lunch. To protect this hoard of nutrients from insects and animals, the plant evolved a biological lock. The mature seeds and tubers contain a trypsin inhibitor. In simple terms, this is an anti-nutrient that blocks your body's ability to digest protein. If you eat the mature seeds raw, your body will reject them violently. But here is the good news. This lock has a key, and that key is heat. Boiling water or roasting fire denatures the inhibitor, breaking the lock and releasing the nutrition. It is a small price to pay for a superfood. This is the most critical part of our journey. If you are going to forage or grow this, you need to identify it with 100% certainty. Nature is generous, but she punishes the careless. First, look for the habit. The winged bean is a vigorous, herbaceous vine. It can shoot up to 12 feet or more. Unlike many other climbers that use little curly tendrils to grab onto things, this plant uses its entire main stem to twine around support. It hugs its host. Next, look at the leaves. They always come in threes. 3 leaflets, triangular or egg-shaped, pointing outwards. When the season is right, you will see the flowers. You cannot miss them. They are large, intricate, and strike a color that is rare in the food world. A vivid pale blue or sometimes a deep lilac. In a survival situation, that blue is a beacon of hope. But the ultimate signature, the one feature that no other plant mimics, is the pod itself. The pod is long, usually 6 to 9 inches. But do not look at the length. Look at the shape. It has 4 distinct frilly wings running down the entire length of the bean. The edges are serrated, almost like a saw blade. If you take a knife and slice the pod crosswise, the cross-section will form a perfect letter X, or a 4-pointed star. This is the X factor. This is nature's trademark. Now, a warning. A serious one. The The tropical forests are full of wild legumes. Some, like the rosary pea or certain wild vetches, contain toxins so potent they can shut down your vital organs within hours. They can look somewhat similar in leaf shape. Mistaking them is not a culinary error. It is a life-threatening medical emergency. But here is the rule that will keep you safe. If the pod is round, smooth, or flat like a snow pea, walk away. If it lacks those 4 serrated wings, do not eat it. Memorize this mantra. No wings, no eat. If it does not have the wings, it does not go in the pot. Now that you can find it, how do you turn this survival resource into a meal without hurting yourself? Remember the warning about the biological lock. Let us solve that. There are 3 ways to consume this plant, depending on what stage of life it is in. Method 1 is the green gold. This is the safest and most common way. You harvest the pods when they are young, tender, and green before the seeds inside have swollen up. At this stage, the toxin levels are negligible. You can snap them right off the vine. They are crisp like asparagus, with a sweet, watery crunch. You can eat them raw in salads, dip them in sauce, or sauté them quickly with garlic. It is fast food, straight from the wild. Method 2 is the heavy fuel. This applies to the mature seeds, the ones that have turned brown and hard, and the underground tubers. This is your protein reserve. But remember, you must use heat. For the tubers, treat them like a potato that fights back. Roast them in the coals or boil them for at least 30 minutes. For the mature dried seeds, you cannot eat them raw. You must roast them until the skins crack and they smell nutty, or boil them thoroughly. The heat destroys the trypsin inhibitor. It unlocks the protein. If you skip this step, you will regret it. Method 3 is the gift of the wind. Do not ignore the flowers and young leaves. The flowers have a texture like mushrooms and a sweet nectar taste. Steaming them or frying them in batter turns them into a gourmet delicacy. They are high in minerals and completely safe. The golden rule of the winged bean is simple. If it is young and green, you can eat it clean. If it is old and brown, cook it down. Respect the fire and the plant will nourish you. There is an old saying among those who keep the old ways. Winged bean seeds are as hard as stone. They sleep for 100 years waiting for the rain. This plant is not for the person who likes to hover over their garden with a watering can every morning. This is for the lazy gardener. This is for the strategist. It fixes its own nitrogen. Pests generally dislike its taste. Drought only seems to make it flower more intensely. But there is one barrier that causes 90% of new growers to fail. The seed coat. The shell of the seed is incredibly hard and waterproof. It is designed to survive monsoons and dry spells. If you just throw it in the dirt, it might sit there for months, doing nothing. You have to wake it up. You have to perform a little surgery called scarification. Take a sheet of sandpaper, or even a rough rock. Rub the seed against it gently. You aren't trying to grind it to dust. You just want to scratch through that shiny brown outer layer until you see a tiny speck of white. You are breaking the shield. Once you have done that, drop it in warm water overnight. By morning, it will have swollen to double its size. It is now activated. Plant that seed, and you only have to do it once. Because this plant is a perennial in the tropics, and it reseeds itself aggressively. But heed this warning. Once it takes hold, the winged bean is a conqueror. It is an invasive force. A mature vine is heavy, very heavy. It can crush a flimsy trellis. It can smother your delicate tomato plants. It can pull down a rotting fence. The solution is to build it a fortress. Give it a strong A-frame trellis, or plant it on the western side of your house to create a living green wall that blocks the harsh afternoon sun. Contain its ambition, and it will feed you forever. The winged bean is more than just a vegetable. It is a reminder that nature is far more generous than we give her credit for. While modern agriculture fights against the land with chemicals and machinery, trying to force the earth to yield, this plant quietly thrives. It feeds itself. It heals the soil. It provides greens, vegetables, roots, and seeds, a complete diet from a single seed. Now, the map to this forgotten supermarket belongs to you. You know the X that marks the spot. You know the rule of fire to purify the seeds. You hold the secret of the sandpaper to wake it from its slumber. This knowledge is your insurance policy. Every winged bean you grow is a vote against the system that told you to be dependent. It is a quiet rebellion in your own backyard. But our journey into the lost wisdom of the earth is not over. Not by a long shot. If the winged bean is the solution to hunger, then the plant I am going to show you next is the solution to thirst and disease. There is another tree, also ignored by the supermarkets. In the next video, we are going to decode a plant that defies the laws of nature. Some call it the miracle tree, but we call it the ultimate survival kit. We will uncover the mechanics of how it purifies water and the methods ancient healers used when there were no doctors around. Make sure you are subscribed to Roots of Legend. You do not want to miss that transmission, because the things that are buried in the past are usually the things that will save our future. I will see you there.